Can the opposition in Bangladesh unseat the Prime Minister? Tens of thousands of protesters say that Sheikh Hasina should step down and call an early election. So what's next for a nation mired in decades of bitter political rivalry? This is Inside Story. Hello and a very warm welcome to the program. It's great to have you with us. I'm Cyril Vanier. She is known as the daughter of democracy to her supporters, an authoritarian to her critics. Bangladesh's Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina has been in and out of power for decades, but tens of thousands of opposition supporters have joined protests in the capital, Dhaka, demanding her resignation. They want a neutral caretaker government to organize the upcoming election. They accuse her governing Awami League party of intimidation and vote rigging in previous elections. Hasina's longtime rival is former Prime Minister Khaleda Zia. She says the government cannot be trusted to oversee a free and fair vote next year. So, what does this mean for democracy in Bangladesh? And what does the future hold for these two leaders who've dominated politics for more than 30 years? We'll get to our guests in a moment. First, though, this report from Victoria Gatenby.
Tens of thousands of opposition supporters protest in the capital, Dhaka, calling for Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina to resign.
We want the fall of this illegitimate government that was elected by a rigged vote. We want to see the people of Bangladesh live in peace, cast their votes safely, cast their votes themselves.
Sheikh Hasina is the daughter of Bangladesh's first president. Some accuse her of being an authoritarian, but under her leadership, the country has become one of the fastest-growing economies in the world. She's alternated power with her main rival, Khaleda Zia, for more than 3 decades. Zia heads the Bangladesh Nationalist Party, the largest in the opposition coalition. In 2018, she was convicted of corruption charges, which she says were politically motivated. She was barred from running in the election later that year. That poll was marred by violence. Sheikh Hasina was declared the winner, but the opposition rejected the results, accusing the government of intimidation and vote rigging. The opposition BNP says the government can't be trusted to run free and fair elections next year either. It's calling for an interim government to be installed. Otherwise, it says it'll boycott the election. The governing Awami League has rejected such calls.
We want to send out a message that there is no alternative to a democratic process other than the rule of law. So in the name of protest, in the name of political program, any kind of acts of terror would not be tolerated. And the rule of law should be established.
Security has been stepped up in the capital. The protests are likely to intensify as the election draws closer. Victoria Gatenby for Inside Story.
Time to bring in all our guests. They're all joining us from Bangladesh. So in Dhaka, Muqtadir Rashid, you are an investigative journalist who writes for the English language newspaper New Age. Well, a warm welcome to you all. Let me address this first question to Salim Altaf George, Member of Parliament for the Awami League, the ruling party. The opposition, Salim, is demanding that the Awami League put in place a neutral caretaker government to conduct the upcoming elections, make sure they're free and fair. Will the Prime Minister, Sheikh Hasina, do that?
Thank you, everybody, first of all, and very good evening to everybody. We are, like we're saying, that next parliament election is going to be free and fair, and is going to be under the existing constitutional system. There is no unconstitutional system is not going to prevail in this country anymore. All the next elections are going to happen in the existing constitutional system. And our opposition friends, they are asking an interim government or a caretaker government or in the name of neutral government, which is completely unconstitutional, declared by the highest court of this country. So we all are bound by that verdict. So in that case, I mean, if our political friends, opposition friends, they want a free and fair election or more less faulty election, they can give us suggestions. How, under the election commission, or the Bangladesh Election Commission, how we can hold more free and fair election. They can give us suggestions. How can we do, like, I mean, the election time government, how it can be formed. So they're not going in that way. They are rigid, and they're like doing everything for bring an unconstitutional system. So from our party, our Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina, we already confirmed everybody that next election, whatever is happen, next election is going to be free and fair election. But though it's a political party's own decision whether they are going to participate in the election or not. So it's not only in the hand of the ruling party, or it's not in the hand of Awami League. It's in the hand of BNP too. So they should will to participate in the election. But sometimes we think that their policy is to bring, like, sorry?
Well, let's ask them if they are going to participate in the next election, since you bring up that point. Let me turn to Rumin Farhana. Will the BNP boycott the next election or run in the next election?
Thank you so much, and a very good evening to everyone. I want to make it very clear at the beginning that Bangladesh is no longer a democratic country. And it has become a completely one-party state ruled by one person. And it is her wish what to do and not to do, how to rule the country, and how to conduct the election, etc., etc. If you look in 2014 election, you will see the government was formed without getting a single vote, because 153 seats went uncontested. If you see 2018, that election is mostly known as midnight election. People couldn't vote. At that time, the Prime Minister sat with the opposition leaders and members, and she promised, she gave assurance, and she said to keep faith on her, and she promised that she will going to hold a very fair election. And what we see in 2018, the whole election was marred by rigging and violence and whatnot. More than 50 candidates of BNP was physically assaulted. Our activists and members, they were not allowed to participate in the campaign. False cases have been filed against them. Their houses and cars were vandalized and whatnot. There was no level playing field before the election. So how can we trust on what government party is saying that this time the election will be free and fair? Today, I saw a small report in Al Jazeera
just a quick
regarding
pause.
Bangladesh.
Rumin, there are a lot of accusations there, and Salim, rest assured, you will get a chance to you'll get a chance to respond to those, of course. But Rumin, there is a question here: will the BNP run in the election or boycott the election? You haven't told us.
Very clearly, we are ready to run the election, provided the government step down and hand over the power to a neutral caretaker government. Because the history shows that only 4 elections were accepted by every single party of this country, and those all 4 were conducted under a caretaker, neutral caretaker government. It's unfortunate, but the reality is under any partisan government, we couldn't have a fair election, neither national election nor any local government election. It is unfortunate, but this is the reality.
Okay, let me turn to Muqtadir. We need some explanation here. I think most of our audience will not be familiar with this system of this caretaker government. Can you explain to us how that has worked in the past?
Thank you for having me here. The caretaker system first introduced not in form of law, but it was introduced in 1990, early 1990. And then it was, the military government ruled by the Irshad regime. And then we had a kind of caretaker arrangement to run a free, fair election. And following that, in 1996...
Wait, hold on. What is that arrangement? What do you mean there was an arrangement to run a free and fair election? What does that mean?
that election was held under the Chief Justice who hold the election at the time. So that arrangement was transformed legally, and that was inducted into the Constitution in 1996. Following that, we had another election in 2001, and we found another election that is in 2008 in December. So after the 2008 election, unfortunately, there is no provision nowadays which basically held under the caretaker arrangement. Caretaker is an interim government, we can say, to understand the global audience. That government will be selected from the impartial or neutral or apolitical person who are from, who are leading from the different sector like judiciary, from those people are
am I correct? Am I correct to describe the system? Am I right to describe the system this way? Under the caretaker government system, 3 months before the election, the parliament and the government would step aside, and what was perceived to be a neutral government would step in for the purpose of overseeing a free and fair election. And this has happened at least 3 times in the country's history: 1996, 2001, and 2008, as you just told us. Am I right on all of that?
Exactly. But in 2008, there was an exception that they took at least 2 years, because at a certain point of time, the military intervened covertly, and they ran for almost 2 years. So they handed over to power, that caretaker government handed over to power to basically Sheikh Hasina after she was assumed in power through the election in 2000. But after that, we didn't find this kind of arrangement. I would say the caretaker, whatever you say, it's interim. But when there is when we see the 2014 election, that was marred by violence, and 2018 election already Rumin said about that, what happened. I don't want to explain it here anymore, but those are an election accepted by the majority of the people in Bangladesh.
So that's really interesting, because you're telling us that those 3 elections you mentioned, 96, 2001, 2008, were widely perceived as free and fair. Pause there for a second. I return to you, Salim, and I'm sure you're going to have a ton of things to say after what Rumin Farhana was telling us earlier. But here's my next question. If there was a system in the country's recent past that allowed elections to be perceived as free and fair by everybody, why not go back to that system?
We had a political arrangement with all the political parties that was not under a constitutional system. That's outside the constitution. We had an understanding with all the other parties that we are going to hold the next 3 elections under the interim government or caretaker government or whatever it may be the name is. But the thing is, how we corrupted the system, how we damaged the system. That's the question. I didn't want to go back for that, because if we go back for that, the dirt will come out. And all the political dirt, our opposition friend BNP, they make the politics dirty for this country. They damaged all the system. Why? And why people thought that this caretaker system is not going to work for this country anymore? Why? Because it was working well before. But why we thought that this system is no longer going to be effective for us? Because the previous government, BNP, has corrupted the system. So
the BNP hasn't been in power for 14 years.
Corrupted the system. I said BNP has corrupted the system of caretaker government. And then this political arrangement went to the court. And the court said the arrangement the political party has been made was unconstitutional. So the highest court of this country said that in their verdict that this system is completely unconstitutional. And then it's bound upon all the people of this country, as it is bound like in every country's people. So we are going to hold the next election under the constitutional system. And I want to make sure to everybody that in Bangladesh, under no unconstitutional system, the election is going to be happen ever again. So we are saying to everybody, our political friends, our opposition parties, that how, under this existing system, how we can hold a free, fair, and credible election to everybody. So we are asking suggestions from them. You cannot be rigid in one point, which is completely unconstitutional. So we are saying, we are asking from them that you are giving us suggestions, fruitful suggestions, that how and how the next election is going to hold, and how the election time government is going to reform, how we can strengthen that election commission. So they are not saying nothing about it. They are trying to make anarchy, a complete anarchy, political unrest, violence, what they have done before. So they are trying to do that again. So after that, what they are wanting to do in the country is not going to happen, because they are trying to jeopardize the life of the people. They are trying to jeopardize the country. They are trying to jeopardize the interest of the people of this country. So we are standing just middle of that. We are saying, no, it's not going to happen anymore. The country,
let us turn to
is
Rumeen.
moving forward under the leadership of Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina. We are go forward with that. We are not going to go back again in the dark time again.
Rumeen, the BNP is asking for a neutral caretaker government. Okay, we've been over that. But as Salim was just reminding us, that has been ruled unconstitutional. And I do appreciate that Supreme Court ruling was extremely controversial at the time. Still, there is that Supreme Court ruling. Doesn't that rob the BNP of a major option, of exactly what you are asking for? The caretaker government isn't going to come back because it's unconstitutional.
Unfortunately, what my friend was telling is not the whole truth. The court, in its short verdict, made it absolutely clear that next two elections can be done under free, fair, and neutral and caretaker government. Then, in the long verdict, the detailed verdict, it made it absolutely clear that next two elections should be held under caretaker government, because it's the necessity of, under the doctrine of necessity, and common people of Bangladesh, they want caretaker government for free, fair, and neutral election. But one thing they added in the detailed verdict, and they said that if Parliament wishes, the Parliament formed a committee called Constitution Amendment Committee, and in that committee was headed by two very senior leaders of Awami League. One was Sajida Chaudhary and the other was Suranjit Sengupta. In that committee, Awami League itself went and said that caretaker government should not be abolished. It should be there in the constitution, at least because the political situation of Bangladesh, because the distrust, and because the relationship between the parties, it's not the time to abolish caretaker government. But one fine morning, they abolished it from the constitution. For what reason, we don't know. They know it the best. Secondly, constitution is not a Holy Quran or a Bible. You can change it anytime for the sake of people.
And it's been changed twice on this topic specifically.
Absolutely. It has already been changed for more than 16 times. And one thing I want to make absolutely clear, that it wasn't there in the constitution before 1996. And it was Awami League who forced BNP, compelled BNP to amend the constitution and incorporate caretaker government in it. For that, they called Hartal for 176 days. They started movement, huge protest, and end of the day, BNP was.
This is a really interesting argument. I'd like to put this to Salim, actually. Rumeen is reminding us accurately that in the 90s, when the Awami League was in the opposition, they were the ones asking for a neutral caretaker government.
This is what I said. I don't want to go back, because it will take a long time. I won't have time to explain what Rumeen said. That's why I say the system was completely ruined by them. Why Awami League had to fight for the caretaker government, while it was settled by a political arrangement in 1991. So why Awami League had to protest, go against that?
Okay, all right. So
Rumeen
I
should
think
say why Awami League had to bring back the caretaker government. Why? Because it was a settlement before in the year 1991. So why Awami League have to fight for that again? Ruben didn't say that. So what I'm saying, that arrangement, when the arrangement was done, and at that time there was no verdict of the court. So when the court said the arrangement was unconstitutional, it is unconstitutional. One thing Ruben said again, that there was a court verdict. It was not verdict, it was an observation by the court that maybe next 2 elections can be done by the caretaker government. But in the original verdict, they said no. And it was the decision by the parliament, what parliament is going to take the decision. Parliament took the decision. So it's been constitutional. One more thing is, while the court passed the judgment, why BNP didn't take any legal step against that? They didn't do that. Why?
Okay,
So
I want to broaden the conversation a little bit.
Back of their mind, they supported that. Now, when everything is gone against them, they're saying, "Oh, now this is we have to bring back the system. We don't want any constitution should be changed. What this and that." They're talking it for like 14 years.
All right, Salim, your point is well taken.
So I don't know that the people of this country, they didn't accept that, don't support that. So it will be remaining same.
All right, Salim, your point is well taken. And I think by now our viewers have understood that at the heart of this battle, there is a political rivalry over this mechanism that has been in place and is no longer in place for organizing elections that are widely perceived as free and fair. We get that. So let's just leave that to the side for a second. And let me go back to Muqtadira and ask you the big, broad question. Earlier in the show, Rumin's opening statement was, you need to understand Bangladesh is no longer a democracy. So that's the question I want to put to you as a journalist who looks at these things in a dispassionate way. You're not a politician. You're not running for office. There have been many accusations of democratic backsliding under the rule of Sheikh Hasina. In your view, is Bangladesh still a fully functioning democracy?
Honestly, I have to say it's no. And the reason why is, the situation, what I see from my eyes, that's I can explain. I don't want to say more because there is a law which we call the Digital Security Act. And with that act, if I say something which the government or the security agencies think they're not suitable for them, they can prosecute me and I would be in jail for many years. And you are very much aware of that. But what I can say the partiality and impartiality. So what I see today when I was covering the violence, the protest of the opposition party here in Dhaka. So I saw the opposition party leaders were dragged to the car and they were taken from the spot, whereas the ruling party men were, parading on the street with the sticks and they are chanting, shouting along with the police, and they were grabbing, dragging opposition activists and handing over to the police. So see that scenario as a normal perspective, as a perspective of a journalist or as a perspective of the simple Bangladeshi citizen. So these are the things you can see on the Barca view. On the other hand, what we believe, the media, you can say the media is booming. So most of the media, under the leadership of Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina. At the same time, how much we can write, its self-censorship is really, really one of the biggest issue every time the journalist is facing in Bangladesh. If you see the last 10 years or 15 years, you see the cases of enforced disappearance, cases of extrajudicial killing. And when everything ended up with the sanction imposed by the Treasury Department of the United States, and the number of extrajudicial killing and enforced disappearance plummeted significantly. So that was a kind of political commitment from the leadership which we are having now. But on the other hand, if you see when we see the U.S. diplomats visited Bangladesh this month, in fact, Azraz Jaya visited and Donald Lu visited. So we thought that the situation would be a bit more different, and the political vibrance will be coming in the run-up of the election. But unfortunately, we see the more violence is happening in the city and across the country, and the opposition leaders are being arrested. They said it's very selective. The number is low, but they are arresting those people who are, can mobilize the big protests.
All right, Muqtadir, thanks for that. And just to provide some of the facts behind what you were just telling us, it's true that the U.S. has shown increasing signs of concern about Bangladeshi democracy. A few things to highlight here. In 2021, Washington sanctioned Bangladesh's elite paramilitary force over alleged extrajudicial killings. That's one thing to put on our viewers' radars. Also, just 2 months ago, the U.S. announced that it would refuse visas to anyone implicated in, quote, undermining the democratic election process. And something else that's noteworthy from the U.S. side of things is that they have not invited, the Biden administration has not invited Bangladesh to its last 2 democracy forums. Okay, with all of that said, and we're competing with the time here, Salim, do you accept, yes or no, that there has been some democratic backsliding under the governance of your prime minister?
What Mr. Muqtadir said is just allegations, what is made by the opposition parties. They are making this allegation, whether it's false or true, that on that basis of allegations, some of the people are talking about it, and we are saying that the allegations have been making is not completely right. It's false. So these false allegations are well spread in the world. It's well spread in the world, and the whole wide world is not investigating properly, because this thing, when you're saying in the regime of Awami League, forced disappearance, extrajudicial killing, this or that, what is undemocratic, they're trying to say, if you go back, the scenario is more bad, more pathetic, more violence is there. No one's saying how many Awami League leaders have been killed, how many popular national leaders have been killed in a broad daylight, in a public meeting, by spraying bullets, by throwing grenades. How many killings has been happened in that time? No one is saying about that. And I just said, like before, a little bit before, I don't want to go back. I want to look forward. What well-being we can bring for this country. So I'm suggesting my utmost request to everybody, our political friends, our opposition friends, everybody should come together for the sake of our democracy, for the sake of our country, for the sake of our people. So don't make any violence. Don't bring this, country back in the dark again.
Okay, sorry, Salim, to do this to you, but I have to jump in. We're over on time, but I want to thank all of you wholeheartedly. We want to hear all those voices, and we did, for joining the discussion here on Al Jazeera. Our guests, Muqtadir Rashid, Salim Altaf George, and Rumin Farhana. Thank you again, and thank you, too, for watching. You can see the program again anytime by visiting our website, aljazeera.com. And for further discussion, go to our Facebook page. That's facebook.com/AJ Inside Story. You can also join the conversation on Twitter, our handle, @AJ Inside Story. From me, Cyril Vanier, and the entire team here in Doha, bye for now.